This is Wickett on Wisconsin. My name's Mike Wickett. After 10 years in Milwaukee talking sports, I took a bit of a break, but now I'm back and here to talk about the Packers, the Bucks, the Brewers, and more with you. And now inside the Koss Headphone Studios, this is Wickett on Wisconsin with me, Mike Wickett. All right, it is a Thanksgiving Eve edition of Wickett on Wisconsin. We will get to an episode later this week, I'm sure, about Packers and Bears. We're very football-centric, but last week was such a crazy weekend, or crazy week, for the Milwaukee Bucks. I tried to keep up with it, and I know you tried to keep up with it, but if you listen to the podcast Locked On Bucks, these guys kept up with it. Joining me right now from Australia, he is Kane Pittman from Locked On Bucks, a podcast you can find wherever you may find your podcasts, including this one. Kane, thank you so much for the time, my friend. How many times have you hit refresh today Googling the word Giannis and Supermax?
Well, first of all, I'm always happy to come on and chat with you, hang out with you. But secondly, I actually have been pretty relaxed about all this, mostly for the reason that we understand that Giannis is not in Milwaukee right now. He's not in the United States. So until he is, I wouldn't expect anything to come out. And secondly, I have seen some, and by the way, first of all, it's very understandable anxiety from Bucks fans. Let me say that. But I have seen some suggestion that we haven't heard anything. Should we be panicking? And my answer is no, because we know what Giannis is like. He's not the guy that's going to be making a big deal out of this one way or the other. You're not going to hear a lot from him. You're not going to hear a lot from the camp. Until then, it's all speculation. So I'm just hanging out until he gets back in the US, which, again, we are just guessing. I thought it was going to be towards the end of this week, perhaps over the weekend. But let's be honest, training camp starts in a couple of days, so it's got to be pretty soon.
You know, I'm a loyal listener to Locked On Bucks. And I believe I heard you say in one of your recent episodes that if Giannis and when Giannis signs the Supermax, even though you're in Australia, you're going to go get a Thanksgiving turkey for you and your whole family. So because, if that happens before tomorrow, whatever time, are you still going to go get a Thanksgiving turkey and give thanks to the Greek Freak staying in Milwaukee?
Oh, hell yeah. This would be a great result for all Bucks fans. I mean, let's be honest, 2020 has been a long year for everyone, and even just from the Bucks from an on-court perspective, obviously didn't finish the way that they wanted to. So if this announcement came on Thanksgiving, I think all Bucks fans would be pretty pumped about that. And let's also just note that I am partial to the Houston Texans, which come on, the Texans and Detroit Lions on Thanksgiving. No one wants to watch that. Let's be real about that. So if sports fans had a bit of a distraction from that game, I think we would all be thankful.
I do want to, well, and by the way, it is Thanksgiving Eve, so it is the biggest bar night in all of all the years. So if you want to have a beverage, I know it's like 8 o'clock in the morning where you're at right now. You're more than welcome to. In a younger day, in a different time in life, Kane, I would have been out at a bar or several tonight, but cheers, this is you and I hanging out on Drunksgiving. Last week, it felt as if the entire Bucks organization and all these Bucks fans had a couple of beers before this Bogdan Bogdanovic deal fell through. Where do you put the most blame on the fact that Bogey is not a member of the Milwaukee Bucks?
Yeah, it's really tough to say. I think this is going to be fascinating over the next, I guess, year or even maybe years to find out what actually went down with this deal, because I just can't really remember a scenario like this where a sign and trade, not just a free agent signing. I mean, we see those types of things reported all the time, but a sign and trade with the details of the players going each way, you just don't see that. And I remember we did a Locked On Bucks podcast directly after the Drew Holiday report came out, and that was legal. That was all fine. So there was nothing wrong with that. The report came out. We did the podcast. We were fired up. Drew Holiday, obviously a huge addition. We wrapped up the podcast, and at the end, I said, Bucks fans, you can take it easy. You can sleep for a few days. We know there's rumors about Bogdan Bogdanovic, but you're not going to hear anything about this because free agency isn't open. And then I finished the podcast, published the podcast, and within 5 minutes, the deal came through for Bogdanovic. And I was completely thrown off because I just was I didn't think that would be reported. It was just such a strange situation. So I guess when someone with the credibility of Woj tweets that out, you just say, okay, well, it's gospel. This is going to happen. Bogdanovic is going to be a Buck. So I think that 24-hour period where Bucks fans thought that he was ultimately nothing but a huge tease. But I don't know where you blame it. I have always had the sense that this has come from Bogdanovic's camp and his agent. That's just what makes sense to me, that this is how this has fallen apart. I don't think there's any great benefit for the Bucks or the Kings to mess this thing up. Clearly, the Kings got nothing out of Bogdanovic, so that's what makes this all so interesting.
And he signs with the Hawks, and they don't match the offer sheet. How stupid was that from Sacramento's perspective to just let Bogdanovic go and get nothing for him?
Yeah, it's odd. I mean, clearly, in the term roster flexibility is one that teams use, and the Bucks have used in the past as well. We must note that with restricted free agents, Malcolm Brogdon, I'm talking about here. Look, it didn't make sense to me. There is some smart people out there that will tell you that they understand why they did this in the end. And they've obviously gone to the draft and they've drafted a player, Tyrese Halliburton. He's going to be a fantastic guard as well. So maybe they just figured that it wasn't worthwhile keeping a guy around that didn't want to be there. And in 12 months' time, who knows what the trade market is. But ultimately, for me, you just match it and you deal with it later. Bogdanovic is a very good player. Don't waste the asset, particularly for a team like the Kings, where you can at least make the argument that the Bucks were going to be a very good team and they thought that they could do some different things around the margins to get them to a championship contender status. The Kings aren't. They're not going to play in the playoffs this year. So why does it matter? Keep this player around and get something for him a little bit later. It didn't make a lot of sense. And also, I'll say the Bogdanovic fit with Atlanta for mine doesn't make a lot of sense either. It's all very strange, all strange.
I mean, he's not going to play with the ball in his hands because of Trae Young. And he wants the ball in his hands, it seems like. And at least sign and trade him to Atlanta. Like there's got to be something on Atlanta's roster. But enough about the Kings, enough about the Hawks. I do want to talk about Drew Holiday. He signed through what? Next season, right? So they get 2 years with Drew under control, and they gave up 3 big first-round picks. And you guys get into a lot of mid-level and bird rights and all these flipping pick stuff on your podcast. Like it goes over my head sometimes. But just 3 first-rounders for Drew for 2 seasons. Was that enough, or was that too much? Where did you come down on that?
Well, it is important to note that it could actually only be 1 season. The second season, not to be a downer, Mike, but the second season is actually a player option. So yes, he could opt into that, and then you get 2 years of control. But there is a possibility that you only get 1 year of Drew Holiday, and he moves on. Now, he's only going to move on if Giannis moves on. And again, the way I look at this, if you are the Bucks, Drew Holiday, and if you separate James Harden from this, arguably he's the best player that could be potentially available in the trade market, but we don't know what the Rockets are going to do. So 4 guys that were available and 4 free agents, I think that you can easily make the case that Drew Holiday was the best player on the market, and the Bucks got him. So if you're trying to show Giannis, forget the Bogdanovic stuff now for a second, because I think it has now been overlooked how much of an addition Drew Holiday is for the Bucks, because everyone is struggling to separate Bogdanovic in that mess from their line of thinking. The Bucks went and got the best player that was available. And yes, they had to give up multiple draft picks, but so what? I mean, you have to do it. Like, could it potentially be a disaster down the road? Yes. But if it's a disaster down the road, it's because you lost Giannis anyway. And really, at that point, what does it matter?
Yeah, Twitter was more reactive, and take Twitter for whatever you want, but more people were pissed about not getting Bogdanovic than they were celebrating Drew Holiday. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. Do Bucks fans understand what they got in Drew?
I think that they do, but and we all did this, and I did this myself as well. I actually packaged the deal that you're giving up for Bogdanovic and Drew Holiday together. And I think if you looked at the Bogdanovic reported sign and trade in isolation, you're giving up DiVincenzo, DJ Wilson, and Ersan Ilyasova. I mean, it was a steal. It was an absolute steal. So I think that that's the hard thing for Bucks fans to let go. But yeah, Drew Holiday's awesome, and he's a perfect fit. And the one thing that I say, and it's really unfortunate because I love Eric Bledsoe. He's a tremendous player, and he's been fantastic for the Bucks over the last 2 regular seasons. It's really unfortunate what we've seen in the postseason. We all know that. But the Bucks don't need a lot to get over the hump. That Miami series, yes, they lost in 5. It was closer than a 4-1 tells you. If you watch those games, you understood that the Bucks were literally in every single game with 5 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. And it becomes hard when the guy that is supposed to be your third best player, you can't play down the stretch. Like it just crippled this team. And we saw the same thing against the Raptors as well. So it's really unfortunate for Eric Bledsoe. Again, really well liked, but the Bucks got better.
How much better is Drew's game overall than Bledsoe? I mean, they're both tremendous defenders. I love when Bledsoe plays within himself. He's a guy that can go to the rack, get his shot. He can pull up for a 10, 12-foot jump shot. But I'm not going to lie. I didn't watch a lot of Drew Holiday. So tell me and tell Bucks fans that are listening, is this a huge upgrade, a decent upgrade, a minimal upgrade?
I mean, it could potentially be a huge upgrade if you look purely on the postseason. And I don't really care about the regular season at this point because we know the Bucks are going to be very good. They are just going to be. You have Giannis, you have Chris, and whether it's Bledsoe or Drew Holiday, you're going to be good in the regular season. They're going to get one of the top seeds. Obviously, they need some luck.
The East got better with the just simply by Kevin Durant getting healthy. So all of a sudden, like that 1 through 3 looks really, really tough.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't see anyone in the East that took a huge jump. I mean, clearly the Nets, if you look and say Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant, but there's a lot of question marks there. And personally, from someone who loves watching Kevin Durant play, I hope he's healthy. But at 30 plus coming back from an Achilles, we don't know. There is question marks there. I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that they are going to be a great team. But back to Drew Holiday offensively, he is someone that if you look at the numbers and you watch him play, he doesn't jump off the charts at you in any facet, whether it's finishing at the rim, whether it's shooting from 3, whether it is becoming a guy that can play make, but he just does everything very well. He does everything very well. He's a fine 3-point shooter. He's a fine pick and roll player and creator, and he can also play off the ball and finish at the rim as well. So he's not elite in any facet. He's not someone that is going to propel the Bucks from a team that has had some real serious postseason offensive struggles to a team that is now out of that issue that they're fine now. That's not going to be the case, but he is a guy that you can rely on in the postseason. He's performed well in the past. That series that he played for the Pelicans against Portland, where they surprisingly swept the Blazers, even though the Blazers had home court advantage, Drew Holiday was monstrous. He had a 30-point game. I think he had a 40-point game in that series as well. So he's got playoff history. And again, more importantly than anything, if you can simply rely on this guy to play close to a level that he played in the regular season, that might be all you need.
That's an upgrade. That's an upgrade from Bledsoe, and I'm a Bledsoe apologist. Like I love watching him play. But there just comes a time when guys like you and I, you have to cut ties. You can't see Bledsoe come up the floor and airball a 3 with 19 seconds on the shot clock for the 11th time in a row, and you're like, I got to stop defending this guy. I have to stop defending this guy. The only thing I know, the only relationship or story I have about Drew Holiday, I was sitting with former Bucks GM John Hammond once, and this was either right before or right after, pretty sure it was right after they drafted Brandon Jennings. And we were talking about point guards, and he said, well, I really like Drew Holiday. And I said, I said, well, off the record, why didn't you draft Drew Holiday? He said, because we drafted Brandon Jennings. I said, okay, because he wasn't going to backtrack on any of that. Yeah. But that's all I got. And after not seeing him in the East playing against the Bucks so often, it's like, well, the name, he's down there in New Orleans. You saw some highlights with him with Zion, and you get excited because he's got to be more competent in the postseason than what you have had in Eric Bledsoe.
Literally every single season of Drew Holiday's career, whether it is the early days with Philadelphia or obviously the extended time with the Pelicans, who, by the way, these teams haven't always been playoff teams. They haven't always been good teams. But in every single season of his career, the team's net rating with him on the floor has been positive. He makes teams better. And you can't say that about a lot of guys. So Drew Holiday is going to make this Bucks team better. And I think the thing that, is also a huge bonus is literally every single person, every human that has had anything to do with Drew Holiday talks glowingly about him. They love this guy. This guy is awesome. He's going to be great for the community. He's going to be great in the locker room. He's going to be great on the floor. He's a full package. He's a great guy and someone that you want to be playing for your franchise.
And I believe I just saw that he had donated millions, or his foundation had donated millions to social injustice, which obviously the Bucks are behind that, considering they led the walkout and the freeze on the games that were played down in the bubble.
Yeah, I don't know what the total sum was here. I think it was something like $5 million,
Yeah,
but
I
he
think you're right.
basically donated his whole bubble wage to causes within New Orleans, I believe it was, or I don't have the exact details there. But yeah, I mean, that's the type of guy he is, which, again, as you pointed to with this franchise, they've been on top of all those types of issues as well. So I think it's a good fit.
Are these the two guys, the one they got and the one they didn't? And we got a lot of ground to cover here, but are these two guys that, do you think Giannis sat down with Horst and with ownership and said, here's my list, go get some of these guys or I'm not signing that Supermax?
It's interesting because I think the evolution of Giannis as a guy who would not get involved in any of that stuff to all of a sudden MVP Giannis, where he understands he does have that kind of pull around the league and players do want to play with him. It's been fascinating to watch. And sometimes you see a guy like LeBron that comes into the league and he already has that status, but Giannis never did. And not only did he never have that status, he never expected that he would be able to have that pull. He's a guy that just came into the league and just wanted to improve himself. And he hadn't been in a situation like this. So he's always had full trust of the organization, whoever it would be. And that's why he's a guy that loved Jason Kidd, despite the fact that everyone else wanted Jason Kidd gone. That's why, because he is the type of guy that trusts people that are going to take care of him. And the Bucks really have taken care of Giannis, from his family to, we know Thanasis is on the roster, these types of things. The Bucks have done everything that they could do for him. But I think last year in particular, Giannis has spoken about the fact that whether it was Wesley Matthews, whether it was working out with Kyle Korver, I think he has started to figure out that I can get some guys. Guys want to play with me. I'm an MVP. So do I know how deep it was where he went out and said, go get Drew Holiday or I'm leaving? That doesn't strike me as something that Giannis would say. But do I think that he was involved in all this stuff? And everything I've heard suggests that he was. I think that, yes, Drew Holiday got the tick of approval from Giannis, which, again, then you just have to ask the question, did he give the tick of approval to Bogdan Bogdanovic? Is he upset about that? What impact did that have with that deal falling through? That's the unknown.
Drew Holiday, Chris Middleton, Giannis, Brook Lopez, and makes up the starting five.
Interesting. See, I think it's going to be Dante DiVincenzo. Look, he was the guy that started basically anytime anyone was out last year. So Chris Middleton missed extended time. DiVincenzo started. Bledsoe missed extended time. DiVincenzo came in. Bud likes to have a true point guard, a veteran guy off the bench. So DJ Augustine, I think, will come off the bench. The only other guy that I could see starting for Dante DiVincenzo may be Bryn Forbes, who came to the Bucks from San Antonio. Not a great defender. He's not a big guy either. He's only 6'2", but he shoots the hell out of the ball. And I wonder whether there would be some, intrigue with starting Bryn Forbes next to all the other guys that can do so much defensively, and seeing if you can get away with having a really, really good shooter in those lineups. Because we know at this point, DiVincenzo's shooting is still a little bit streaky. So we'll see. If I had to bet, I would be out of those two guys that would come in and start.
It's very generous of you to say that his shooting is streaky. I think that's a very nice way for you to say that he's not proven himself to be a very good shooter in the NBA. You got to figure this has to be his prove-it year, right? Like, this has to be DiVincenzo's, hey, we drafted you 3 years ago in the first round. You're the guy. You came from Villanova. We know how athletic he is. I really like him, but if he doesn't prove it by 40 games in, you got to yank him out of that starting lineup, or you got to figure out that this guy may not actually be a thing.
Really interesting. I don't know what happened in between the NBA shutdown and the bubble, but we know that this affected guys in different ways. They weren't able to get into their routine and work out like they normally would. From the turn of the new year to the start of March, DiVincenzo was looking really, really good. I mean, we know that defensively he has an impact, and he's had an impact from the first game that he played in the NBA the season before. But offensively, again, if you want to use the word streaky, if you want to use the word inconsistent, you can go about it however you want. But he's shown flashes of being a really interesting offensive piece, a guy that can score quickly, a guy that can get you double-digit scoring. So January After January, February, and March, he was shooting at over 60% true shooting. He was averaging around 12 to 13 points per game, and really looked like a guy that, hang on, he's starting to figure it out offensively. It looks like the game is slowing down for him a little bit because he always gets to his spot. Like, he can get to the rim easily.
Yes.
But there were so many times that he would get to the rim and he would sort of like be heavy on the finish or just a little bit erratic. He was never able to control his body. To me, he looked like a guy that was starting to figure it out, and it was really, really exciting. Unfortunately, the 3 or 4 months he came back and he wasn't the same guy.
You know, it's strange. Like, we always think if you're a first-round pick, you need to be, Joe Burrow for the Cincinnati Bengals, or you need to be Zion Williamson. You need to be great. You need to be Ja Morant. And most of the guys drafted in that first round aren't good for 2 years or aren't good for 3 years. A lot of them never get good. This is one of those, well, we invested in you. We were only kidding when we said we were going to trade you to Sacramento. Psych. We're not really going to do that. Is there a meeting, do you think, that DiVincenzo has with Horst, has with Coach Bud, maybe a Zoom call with Giannis to say, look, forget about that. You're our guy. We need, because they need him to be a big-time piece. I think he's capable of 12 to 14 points a night. I think he's a 12 and 4 rebound kind of guy that can either start or come off the bench and give you those numbers.
Yeah, I don't have the concerns that this is going to have an impact on him or he wouldn't be happy about that. I mean, sure, I'm certain that he would be disappointed that he would be included in a trade going away. But I also think that these players are aware of what's going on. And if anything, DiVincenzo might use this as a chip on his shoulder to say, oh, you're willing to just throw me in on the trade with Bogdanovic? I can be as good as that guy. Now, whether he gets to that level or not, we will wait and see. Certainly the shooting is the main aspect that he would have to improve. But let's be honest, he's staying in Milwaukee on a championship contender instead of being in Sacramento. Like, he's got to be happy about that. Like, so that's why I'm not buying the fact that he would be upset about this. Yes, I think they probably already had the conversation. And we saw Dante yesterday tweeted, love Bucks fans. He's fine. He's a great guy. He loved being in Milwaukee. Again, another one of those players that's loved in the locker room. I'm not concerned about his attitude at all.
On the other end of the spectrum, DJ Wilson, does he ever pan out, or is he just a guy they can at some point trade for nothing or salary relief? Is he ever going to be a part of the organization?
California kid, thought he was going home. Maybe it was going to get more opportunities.
He wanted to go to Sacramento.
Maybe he did. Again, I don't think anyone wants to go to the Kings. Let's be clear about that. But I think he's in a fascinating position, DJ Wilson, because if you look at the moves that the Bucks have made, there is an opening there for him to play. Brook Lopez stays. He will start at the 5. Bobby Portis is a guy that, is probably right now the backup 5. And then at the 4, Giannis obviously soaks up a lot of those minutes. But you don't have Ersan Ilyasova there anymore. You don't have Marvin Williams there. The year before, it was Nikola Mirotic that came in and took all those minutes. So there is a reason to believe that DJ Wilson could be fighting with the rookie, Jordan Nwora, for some spot minutes at that 4 or 5 position. So if I'm DJ Wilson, I'm looking at this as an opportunity. Do I think he pans out? I'm not 100% sure. Again, you would love to see the 3-point shot be more consistent. I think that's ultimately what has slowed him down, his offensive side of the ball, because, look, he's proven he's a versatile defender. You can throw him in different matchups.
Bobby Portis, I've already called him Bobby Simmons 6 times on Twitter and been busted for it. He's had an interesting path to get to Milwaukee. He's had on the court, off the court. He's skilled offensively. He's not very good defensively. What letter grade would you give the Bobby Portis signing?
Can I give it a question mark? And the reason I say that is because I was just shocked that this was a guy that the Bucks went after, because we've seen before in years previous that they do go for guys that are squeaky clean character-wise and also good defenders. That's typically the guy that the Bucks go for. But I think we saw a change with this offseason with guys like Bryn Forbes and DJ Augustine and Bobby Portis. I think they realize that they need guys that can do more offensively, particularly in the half court. Now, you can look at the other side of that and say, well, can you actually play Bobby Portis in a big game in the fourth quarter? I don't know.
Has he ever played in a big game in the fourth quarter?
Well, this is the thing with Bobby Portis. I am always interested in players that have been stuck in really bad situations for an extended period of time, but have talent. And Bobby Portis is one of those guys. He's very talented offensively, but he's played for the Bulls, the Knicks, and the Washington Wizards. And let's be honest, none of those situations have been a good spot to be for a young guy trying to develop, trying to learn how to win, and trying to have a contribution to a good basketball team. So, look, I think there's question marks there. It was a surprising signing for me. But again, the guy is talented offensively. He can really shoot the ball. He really shoots the three well. And I think
Bud's going to love that.
Yeah, he'll stretch the floor. And I think I'm really more than anything excited to see what he could do in a good team because he hasn't had that opportunity.
Listening to your podcast, seeing stuff on social media, DJ Augustine met with mixed results. Some people think good signing. Some people think over the hill and a waste of a spot. I don't know enough about DJ Augustine. I saw him in the bubble against Milwaukee for a while, and I'm like, but that guy would look good in a Bucks uniform. But I was surprised when I picked up the phone and hit refresh on Saturday that Augustine had signed with the Bucks.
Yeah, I mean, the big question here is the contract. And the easiest way to describe this contract is they've basically obviously waived or declined the option for Ersan Ilyasova, dusted off that contract, put some white out on the name, changed the years, and said, here you go, DJ Augustine, take the deal. That's essentially what it is. It's the same contract.
Can he take a charge like Ersan? That's all that matters.
Nobody can. And I have to say, it's sad that Ersan's not around. There was a lot of guys, including Bledsoe and George Hill, that have also moved on, but maybe none more so than Ersan that I wanted to see win a title with Milwaukee. I'll never forget seeing Ersan being at Fiserv Forum at the end of Game 5 against the Celtics. The Bucks wrapped up that series to move to the conference finals. Ersan had never been to the conference finals, and just how happy he was after the game and fired up, and the fact that it happened in Milwaukee. This guy's been here for a long, long time. I mean, he came to the Bucks in the Andrew Bogut draft. That's how long he's been around. So
that's right. Oh my God, that was before I even got to Milwaukee.
It's insane. So I do want to tip my hat to Ersan before we move on. Sad to see him go, and I wouldn't rule out him somehow finding his way back to Milwaukee, whether it's this season or next.
His girl's a Milwaukee girl, right? His wife is a Milwaukee girl, right?
They didn't actually move. This is a great story with Ersan. So he obviously spent some time with a bunch of teams, but Orlando, Philadelphia, Atlanta. He was down there with Bud as well. But his family actually stayed living in Wisconsin, in Milwaukee. They didn't move the kids. They still went to school here. So he's a full blown Wisconsinite, Ersan. So again, we'll see what happens with him in the near future and see where he lands. Hasn't been picked up yet. But Augustine, I think that was why people were a little bit iffy on this, because they look at it and they see the yearly figure of $7 million and they think that's a lot of money for a 33-year-old. I do think you have to remember that George Hill is outgoing. He's 34. He was getting paid more than that. Now, with Augustine, you lose defense. No doubt about that. Augustine tries hard. It's not through a lack of effort. He's a consummate professional, and he will try hard, but he's just not a great defender. He's just not. He doesn't have elite athleticism. He doesn't have a lot of size. He doesn't have the length of a George Hill to be able to stay in front of guys. So the question mark for him will be defense, but again, he's a capable pick and roll ball handler. He's a good shooter over the course of his career, 38% plus in the postseason as well. And as you mentioned, we saw him play pretty well against the Bucks and hurt them at times. So Augustine's a fine player. He's a fine player. I could see him being in the closing lineup next to Holiday, Middleton, Giannis, and Lopez in certain situations. Again, the Bucks have got a very capable point guard. Probably had to overpay a little bit, but everyone got overpaid this offseason. Everyone.
About 5-6 years ago, whenever the new NBA contract came out, and these contracts exploded. Maybe it was 6 or 7 years ago. I don't know. When Timofey Mozgov got that ridiculous contract, or some of the ones the Bucks have signed, I stopped caring about the number that they signed. As long as they can fit it all under the cap, I really stopped caring about that. You want to pay Giannis $50 million a year? You want to pay LeBron $45 million a year? To me, it's like, whatever. It's not my money. It's Eden's. It's Lazary. It's just a thing in the NBA. It doesn't really matter anymore.
And it's not an anchor of a contract. I mean, certainly you probably would have liked it more if it was 1 year with a team option or a non-guarantee in the second year, that would be better, because it certainly makes him more tradable if you need to as well. So the problem that with 2 years is that you probably, if you need to or want to, it might be a little bit more difficult to add DJ Augustine to a trade, because it is technically a 3-year deal. And the same with Pat Connaughton if you wanted to go down that path.
Is anybody excited about the Pat Connaughton deal besides Pat Connaughton's agent?
Well,
you're too nice of a guy to rip on this, Kane. I'm reading your body language right now.
Well, I actually got destroyed on Twitter because when it first and I'll be honest, like there hasn't been too many times where I've been destroyed on Twitter. I think in general I tend to get along with Bucks fans for the most
part. You're a nice
guy,
Kane. You got to cut that crap out.
But I did tweet when the initial deal came out, which was about $4.1 million for 2 years. I said, look, Pat Connaughton gets a little bump in salary, much deserved for him. And everyone took me to the cleaners. Now, I don't care. I'm standing by that. The guy, Pat Connaughton, the guy deserves a pay raise. He's been paid $1.6 million the last 2 seasons. If you look across the league at guys that are on minimum deals and what they're contributing to a team, Pat Connaughton has been a fine rotation player. He is what he is. He's athletic. He can dunk. He's not awful defensively, and at times he can be a streaky shooter. And we've seen him in the Boston series come up big in the playoffs. Now, do I think that he's a player you can play in the postseason? No, I don't. Would you have wanted to give him a raise if you're a Bucks fan? No. But these are two separate things. For the Bucks, the deal doesn't make a lot of sense, and there was some salary cap, let's say salary cap issues with the deal, where it turned into a 2-year deal to a 3-year deal with actually more than $5 million on the salary cap each year. Not ideal situation for the Bucks, let's say that. But Pat, good on you, man. Go get that money. Congratulations.
I saw the whole conversation go down, Kane, and I laughed. I was just sitting there watching on my phone like, oh, he's getting crushed for this. Wes, Corver, Bledsoe, Ersan, George Hill, Robin Lopez. Who did they miss the most? When we get to April, assuming we get to April, who are you going to say, man, I really wish they had this guy?
Wesley Matthews, because if I look at Bledsoe is the best player out of the group. That's indisputable. He's by far the best player, but they got Drew Holiday. So I can't put Bledsoe in that category, and I really can't put George Hill either. So it's Wesley Matthews for mine for what they need. And Robin Lopez, shout out to him, by the way. Great guy. And, declined that $5 million option in Milwaukee. And I think everyone was a little bit shocked by that. And then he just went in and cashed in $7.3 million with the Wizards. So, hey, good luck to him for that. That's a great deal. He wouldn't have played a lot in Milwaukee either way. I don't think there was a great role for him. So shout out to Robin.
I'm just still upset he didn't get more run in that Miami series. Like, I kept screaming that maybe somebody without Giannis, especially, before elimination, maybe somebody physical to go up against Adebayo in the middle there would have benefited Milwaukee in some way.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think certainly the Orlando series, he was matched up with Nikola Vucevic a lot. Really got taken to the cleaners.
That Vucevic dude's good. That dude's fantastic.
I mean, to be fair, Robin Lopez wasn't on his own. Or the Bucks were getting torched from all angles by Vucevic, who threatened to actually make that an interesting series. But Robin Lopez ultimately, I think the days of needing 2 genuine centers, 2 fives, it just gone. And while it was fun to see Robin Lopez shoot threes and do the cup of three celebration, it was fun. But ultimately, in the postseason, if you're the Bucks, you're not going to play him. So you're fine that the $5 million is off the books, and he got a pay rise. So shout out to him. But it is Wesley Matthews, to get back to the initial question, because he was a guy that so underrated what he did defensively, guarding guys like James Harden, but then also guarding LeBron James and Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. He took all those key defensive matchups, which allowed Chris Middleton more freedom, and I think contributed to the season that Chris Middleton had. Now, the unfortunate thing about all this is when Jimmy Butler was just consistently going wild in the postseason, Wesley Matthews was sitting on the bench. And I think Bucks fans were extremely upset about that at the time. I think Bud wanted to get more offensive versatility in the lineups, but it didn't make a lot of sense to me. Matthews did pretty well on Butler historically and in the times during that series that he was on the floor. Whether or not that contributed to Wesley Matthews saying stuff that I'm not playing for this team if you're not going to use me, I don't know. I get the sense that maybe he also looked at the Lakers and said, well, I'm going to play a significant role here now that they've lost Danny Green. And I think they're closer or more of a sure thing to get to the NBA Finals when you're playing next to LeBron and Anthony Davis.
Listen, I love Giannis. I think you love Giannis. I'm a big Chris Middleton fan, but if I have the opportunity to play with LeBron James, still an elite player, and Anthony Davis, and I get to live in Los Angeles, I'm a big fan of Milwaukee, but I probably would take that. I know we're short on time, but I do want to ask you a couple, and then I'm going to drop a truth bomb on you, which no one seems to want to admit here, Kane. Clear something up for me. I heard you guys talking about this on the podcast, Locked On Bucks, if you want to check out Kane's podcast. They only have 14 guys on the roster. They don't have enough money to sign a 15th guy.
Yeah, so the way that this works out is, and this would have been the same I'll try and keep this as simple as possible, but if you are over the cap and you acquire a guy via sign and trade, or you use the mid-level exception or biannual exception, which they have. They use the biannual exception with Bobby Portis. They use the mid-level exception, a fair portion of that with DJ Augustine. And I think it's not 100% confirmed. I think maybe a little bit of that as well with Bryn Forbes. Then that puts you, that triggers a hard cap. So the Bucks, under any circumstances, cannot go over $138.9 million this year. There's nothing they can do. They cannot get over that. So they are right now, I think, and some of these numbers, again, because the deals haven't come through fully, I think they have around maybe $1 million or somewhere around that under the hard cap, which is obviously less than a minimum deal. So as it currently stands, they can't do anything. They're not going to be able to add a 15th man. If they wanted some flexibility, they could try and arrange a salary dump of, the obvious candidate would be DJ Wilson and his $4.5 million. That would open up the opportunity to either sign another minimum guy or later in the year, which I think is probably more likely the case, get in on the buyout market, which we know last year allowed them to pick up Marvin Williams. And every single season there is, guys that can really contribute to a contender that ended up being bought out and they can come to a team. So that's probably where it lies. Outside of a trade, by the way, which, who knows?
You can confirm or deny this. This was all in Horst's plan to get Bud to just play his best players and not try to go so deep, isn't it?
I was laughing at so many people that were saying that. It's interesting, though. I mean, I still look at this team and
they're still
I see
12 deep. They're still 12 guys deep that you could say giving you significant contributions.
Yeah, and I think that the reason I like this team more than I did last year's team is because I think that the variety of guys allows them to be a little bit more diverse given the situation. So if they want to go a little bit of size and a little bit of length offensively, Torrey Craig, come into the lineup, my friend. If they want a bit more shooting, Bryn Forbes, here you go, jump in. If they want to go small, maybe they put Giannis at the 5 and say, Bobby Portis, come in. You're going to be an offensive player. So I do think that they have more options than they had last year. But yeah, I could probably talk about the Bucks rotation forever. I don't think that the picture is any clearer than it was. So is Bud still going to play everyone 25 minutes each? I don't know. I have no idea.
All right, I'm going to get you out with this, and maybe this is more than a one-sentence or two-sentence answer, but Drew Holiday, DJ Augustine, Bobby Portis, Bryn Forbes, I'm going to tell you right now, as a basketball fan and as a Bucks fan, Kane, none of these signings matter until Giannis can learn to shoot. All right? I hear everybody talking about Drew, and I hear everybody talking about all these things, and if the Bogdanovich deal had gone down, but none of this matters if Giannis can't shoot 77% from the free throw line or doesn't have anything besides getting to the rim. I fear and what sucks is they don't have a 3-month off season like they normally would, where he could shoot 5,000 jumpers and 5,000 free throws. I want to see Giannis, the three-point shooter, disappear. I could give two you-know-whats about Giannis shooting 34% from three. I need Giannis to have a back to the basket, a baby hook, a pull-up jumper that is consistent, because none of these signings matter, and they don't even get to the Eastern Conference Finals. You can agree or disagree until Giannis learns to shoot.
I mean, I would disagree just based on the fact that we saw him get to the Eastern Conference Finals a year ago and he didn't know how to shoot. So, I mean, they've proven that they could still get there.
But Miami is going to get better. You know they are, and you know that the Nets are going to be there in theory, with maybe the greatest player on the planet and Kyrie Irving. Like, that is what scares me about the playoffs, is if they don't get there, it's because Giannis can't shoot.
Maybe. I look at the East and I think Miami are really interesting. Could they be better? I don't know. I mean, you look at the younger guys and you see Bam and obviously Ty Hero, and you assume that they're going to get better. But I also think that the bubble situation was perfect for them. I don't expect them to come in and all of a sudden be a top 2 seed in the conference. I think what we saw across the regular season, 60-plus games, is more like what they are. They were a very good team at home, and on the road, they were very scratchy. They weren't great. They weren't great on the road. So, look, I haven't seen a team make a huge jump. But Brooklyn is clearly the wild card, because if they get Kevin Durant's best, then
if they get 80% of Kevin Durant, that's still pretty damn good.
Yeah, that vaults them right up to the top of the East. I think with the Bucks, no doubt. But again, in postseason, you would take Kevin Durant because he's done it before in big games. He can shoot the outside shot. He can do a bunch of different things. Free throw percentage, I'll give you. Giannis, he's going to live at the free throw line.
Exactly. He has to get better at this.
Yeah, and if you can't rely on him to shoot 80%, you can't afford to have games where he is shooting 40% from the free throw line. You just can't. If you're leaving 10 points at the free throw line in a playoff game, it's going to hurt you. The number I always go back to from the Toronto Eastern Conference Final Series, the entire point differential for that series with Toronto was only +6 in the Raptors' favor. That series was very, very, very close. If you look at purely the numbers and the shooting splits between Kawhi and Giannis, very similar. Kawhi was not efficient during that series, and I think that's what people forget. The Bucks did a pretty good job on Kawhi Leonard defensively, but the big difference was Kawhi Leonard was above 90% at the free throw line. Giannis was in the mid-50s, and the point differential from the free throw line was somewhere off the top of my head, it was around +20 in favor of Kawhi. That was the series, and there was a lot of other things that went wrong. But the easiest way for the Bucks to take a massive jump in the postseason would be Giannis knocking down free throws. I think that's bailing out everyone else. That's bailing out Eric Bledsoe and Pat Connaughton and all these other guys that haven't been able to hit wide open shots. The Bucks shot 28% on wide open threes, so let's not ignore that. One man can't do it on his own. Someone else is going to have to step up and knock down a shot. But certainly the MVP knocking down free throws would be huge, absolutely huge.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't a Bucks game until Giannis airballed a free throw. Like, that's when you knew it was a real Bucks playoff game. Kane, thank you so much, man. I asked you for 20. You gave me over 40 minutes. I definitely appreciate it. I know that it's going to be a busy day for you, and especially, I think you agree, the Supermax signing is coming. I feel like Giannis has seen what Milwaukee has done. He's going to come back from vacation. I don't know. Maybe he's in the air right now as we're recording this. But I feel like good things are coming for the Bucks. So thank you again for coming on. I know you'll be on top of it with your podcast, Locked On Bucks.
Anytime, man. And like I said, right off the top, you just make sure you sit back, relax, and enjoy Texans and Lions on Thanksgiving, because as a sports fan, it does not get any better than that.
How did you become a Texans fan?
Well, I actually,
because why aren't you a Packers fan for having spent time in Wisconsin and having the connection to the state?
Yeah, it's true, but I was a Bucks fan for a lot earlier than I was a Texans fan. But I also didn't make my first trip to Wisconsin until 2015. So maybe if I had have got there and I didn't have a team and I went to a few Packers games, it might have changed things. But I really loved Andre Johnson. He attracted me to the Texans originally. And then J.J. Watt, everyone loves J.J. Watt. Now, obviously, not this year. This year, I would never change my team. I'll say that. If I'm a fan, nothing could happen to make me change my team. I'm totally against that. But to say I have an actual interest in the Texans this year would be false. I don't care about that team. Bill O'Brien killed my interest in the Texans. He's gone, but not before he screwed up the whole thing.
Deshaun Watson's been like QB2 since they fired Bill O'Brien. He has been absolutely insane. As my Texans insider, should I start Duke Johnson in fantasy football, or is he a waste against the worst rush defense in the National Football League?
Nah, don't start him. Don't trust. There's only 2 players you can trust on the Texans offensively. Deshaun Watson, as you pointed to, has been fantastic. And the other one, not to rub it in to your Packers fans, listeners, Will Fuller.
Not necessary, Kane.
Listen, Will Fuller is a star. And by the way, that's what makes the DeAndre Hopkins trade so depressing, because Will Fuller as a number 2 or number 3 was lethal. And obviously it hurts. It hurts.
For sure. Hey, thank you again. It's weird to say happy Thanksgiving because I know you're not having a turkey dinner and all that kind of stuff, but we're a week away from camp and a month and a half or 5 weeks from the start of the NBA season. It's crazy to think about that, but I know you guys will be all over whatever happens between now and December 22nd or whenever the NBA season starts. Thank you so much again for coming on, man. I appreciate it.
Anytime, and shout out to you for getting into Fiserv Forum as well. One of the only people that are going to be allowed in there over the next few months.
Yeah, I mean, I've got special access as people who are watching this video. The access I've got. Kane, you take care, my friend.
You too, man.
See you later.
Thanks for listening to Wickett on Wisconsin. If you have any feedback or you want to reach out to the show, you can find me on Facebook, Mike Wickett Podcasts, or you can email MikeWickettPodcasts@gmail.com. And you can find me on Instagram and Twitter @Mike Wickett. Thanks to Silverman Sound Studios for providing the music for today's show. And you can find us anywhere you find your podcasts, including Apple, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. Until next week, thanks for listening to Wickett on Wisconsin.